Picture a bank executive, right? They are just staring at their quarterly
You're
reports.
probably stressing out.
Oh, absolutely. But they are looking at this massive spike in loan approvals, like up to a 70% automation rate.
Wow.
Yeah, they are bringing in thousands of new customers. But here is the anomaly, the thing that doesn't make sense. Their default risk hasn't moved an inch.
Which, I mean, in the financial sector, that's almost unheard of.
Right. Usually, opening the floodgates to that many new borrowers means you are taking on a mountain of high-risk loans.
Yeah, you expect the risk to shoot up right along with the revenue.
Exactly. But in this scenario, the risk is flat and the revenue is just climbing. And, that isn't magic. It's actually the result of treating ethical AI design not as some annoying compliance hurdle, but as a hardcore engineering feature.
And that is the fundamental shift happening right now.
Yeah.
For years, ethics in technologies, especially artificial intelligence, was treated like a coat of paint.
Like an afterthought.
Yeah, exactly. You build the house, you wire the electricity, and at the very end, the legal team walks through to make sure nothing is blatantly on fire.
Right. The classic compliance checklist.
But the organizations actually winning in this space today, they've realized that ethics is the foundation itself. I mean, if you are building a skyscraper on a fault line, the seismic retrofitting isn't red tape.
No, of course not.
It's the only thing keeping the building standing when the ground shifts.
Which brings us to the mission for today's deep dive. We are tearing into this massive 2024 to 2025 report titled The Architecture of Integrity: Case Studies in Ethical AI Leadership.
It's a heavy read, but a good one.
It really is. And for anyone listening, whether you are a VP of operations trying to figure out how to actually govern AI, or you're just someone trying to cut through the relentless hype, we're pulling 5 very specific real-world blueprints from this research.
Because we need practical examples, right?
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. The goal here is to show how building ethical AI isn't just about staying out of trouble. Proactive accountability structures are actually driving competitive advantage.
And, the real value of this specific report is that it just ignores the theoretical philosophy of AI,
Thank goodness.
right? We aren't talking about science fiction or Terminator scenarios. We are looking at the actual mechanical decisions organizations are making today to secure long-term stakeholder trust.
So let's start with that bank executive scenario we mentioned at the top, because that is a real case study from the report. It's about a company called Zest AI.
Yeah, they're doing some really interesting work.
They build machine learning models for credit underwriting, and they're used by institutions like All-In Credit Union and First Hawaiian Bank.
And the core problem they are tackling there is historical lending bias.
Right, because legacy financial data is just riddled with systemic discrimination.
It really is.
Yeah.
Think about how a traditional algorithmic model works. It's fed decades of historical loan data and told to find patterns of who defaults and who pays.
Makes sense on the surface.
But that historical data reflects decades of redlining and bias against specific zip codes, races, and genders.
So the data itself is already corrupted.
Exactly. The legacy algorithm doesn't know it is being discriminatory. It just sees, oh, this certain zip code historically had higher default rates, so it automatically penalizes anyone applying from that area.
It basically automates and mathematically hides the prejudice.
It does.
Okay, so how does Zest AI actually fix that? Because the report mentions they use something called adversarial debiasing.
Yeah, quite the mouthful.
It sounds like incredibly dense jargon. How does that practically work inside the software?
Well, the best way to visualize adversarial debiasing is to imagine two different AI programs locked in a continuous game of cat-mouse.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
So the first AI is the predictor. Its job is to look at an applicant's financial data and predict if they are creditworthy.
Standard underrating stuff.
Right. But the second AI is the adversary. And its only job is to look at the predictor's decisions and try to guess the applicant's race, gender, or age based purely on who was getting approved.
Oh, wow. So if the adversary AI can accurately guess that the predictor is, say, mostly denying loans to a specific minority group, it means the predictor is using biased proxies.
Like that zip code we mentioned earlier.
Right.
Precisely. So when the adversary successfully guesses the demographic, it penalizes the predictor.
It slaps it on the wrist.
Basically, yeah.
Huh.
The predictor then has to go back, adjust its internal math, and try again. And they run this loop millions of times until the predictor is making highly accurate credit decisions. But the adversary can no longer guess the demographics of the applicants.
That's brilliant. The model actively unlearns the historical bias.
It engineers the bias right out of the system.
Wait, I'm stuck on a business reality here. I want to play the skeptic for a second.
Sure, go for it.
The report notes Zest AI is specifically using this to improve approval rates for thin file borrowers.
Right, people with very little credit history.
Yeah. And if you are a bank, a thin file inherently means a lack of data. And a lack of data usually equals high risk.
That's the traditional thinking, yes.
So if they are aggressively approving people with no credit history just to hit some fairness metric, how are they not just lowering the bar and filling the bank's portfolio with subprime high-risk loans? Doesn't focusing on historical bias inherently add more risk?
What's fascinating here is that Zest AI shatters that exact assumption. They aren't layering the bar at all.
They aren't.
No, they're using better sensors to find people who already clear the bar but were just invisible to the old system.
Ah, I see.
A legacy system looks at a thin file, gets confused, and defaults to deny. But Zest AI's models are using thousands of alternative data points and fairness optimizations to prove that many of those thin file applicants are actually incredibly reliable.
So that is how lenders achieve those 70% automation rates without increasing their default risk.
Exactly. They are discovering hidden prime borrowers that their competitors are just blindly rejecting.
So the ethical constraint, the debiasing, is actually the discovery mechanism for new revenue.
It is.
You are upgrading the steering system so you can navigate the track faster, rather than just putting brakes on a race car.
That's a great way to put it. It fundamentally changes the ROI of fairness. It proves it's a measurable engineering goal that actively expands your market share.
Okay, so Zest AI proves you can engineer historical bias out of a data set. But what happens when the risk isn't just a biased loan, but like a literal biological threat?
That's a massive jump in stakes.
Right. How do you govern AI when the stakes jump to global survival? That's the transition we see with our second case study, Google DeepMind and the release of AlphaFold 3 in May 2024.
Yeah, AlphaFold 3 is just a monumental leap in biological research.
It really is.
It's an AI model designed to predict the three-dimensional structures of molecules, including proteins and DNA, from basic one-dimensional sequences.
Which sounds super technical, but the implications are huge. Staggering. The potential here to accelerate drug discovery, to cure diseases that have baffled scientists for decades. I mean, over 10,000 researchers are engaged in this ecosystem.
But the report categorizes this as a severe dual-use technology.
Yes, it does.
Because the same algorithm that can predict the structure of a life-saving vaccine could, theoretically, be manipulated to predict the structure of a highly lethal, novel pathogen.
And that is the tightrope DeepMind was walking. They couldn't just launch this thing onto the internet and hope for the best.
Definitely not.
The report details an incredibly rigid pre-release strategy. They didn't just test it internally, they brought in over 50 external experts in virology, biosecurity, and national security long before the launch.
Okay, let's get into the how of that, because having 50 national security experts in a room sounds great for a press release, but how did that actually change the code?
Right. How do you operationalize that advice?
Yeah. How do you constrain an AI of that magnitude without crippling its ability to do the helpful molecular predictions? Well, they utilized a layered structural defense. One of the key mechanisms was cross-referencing their safeguards against public databases, like the Protein Data Bank.
Okay.
Essentially, they built a highly sophisticated firewall into the model's architecture itself.
So it's baked right in.
Exactly. They trained a secondary filtering system to recognize the specific molecular signatures associated with known toxins and dangerous pathogens.
Like a digital biohazard scanner.
Yeah. If a user inputs a sequence and the model starts generating a structure that mathematically mirrors a restricted biothreat, the system interrupts the process and just blocks the output.
Wow. They hard-coded the safety limits into the generation process itself.
They did, and they paired that internal firewall with secure infrastructure deployment.
Meaning they didn't just put it on GitHub.
Right, they didn't just hand out the raw open source code to anyone with a laptop. They provided access through controlled, cloud-based interfaces where they could monitor usage patterns and enforce those safety filters in real time.
Bringing this directly to the listener, maybe you aren't predicting molecular structures in your daily operations.
Probably not.
But the strategic takeaway is universal. If you are deploying high-stakes AI in healthcare, finance, or logistics, embedding multidisciplinary risk assessments early is your ultimate defense against disruption.
It really is. DeepMind's strategy prevents government regulators from sweeping in and shutting down the entire project because of an unmitigated threat.
Exactly.
It creates an auditable trail of responsibility. DeepMind can prove to the global scientific community and to regulatory bodies exactly how they mapped and mitigated the risks.
And that transparency is why they maintain the trust of those 10,000 researchers.
If proactive risk assessment secures your product's foundation, the next challenge is getting the end user to actually trust it.
Right, which bridges us to the next massive hurdle. How do you get humans in the real world to actually trust the system?
Let's look at Jacaranda Health in Kenya.
Yes, they operate the Zest AI platform.
It's an incredible system.
It really is. This is an AI-enabled SMS system that triages maternal health messages for over 3 million Kenyan mothers.
3 million. That's a massive scale.
Huge. And in 2024, they partnered with the IDRC to heavily focus on equitable risk screening based on socioeconomic factors.
Because the stakes here are immediate and severe.
Literally life and death.
Right. If this AI system gives inaccurate medical advice, or if it hallucinates, the result is actual health harm to a mother or child.
And there's also the risk of inequitable outcomes, right?
Exactly. An AI trained purely on urban hospital data might not understand the specific symptoms or vernacular of a woman in a rural, under-resourced village.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The report explicitly highlights that Jacaranda strictly enforces a human-in-the-loop principle.
Yes, they do.
They have published principles for responsible, person-centered AI, prioritizing do no harm and equity. But again, putting on my skeptical COO hat here.
Let's hear it.
From a pure business efficiency perspective, if you are paying human clinicians to sit there and monitor the AI's text messages, haven't you fundamentally failed at automation?
It does seem counterintuitive at first.
Right. Like, where is the margin if the human is still doing the work? Doesn't keeping humans in the loop defeat the entire purpose of automating with AI?
That perspective mistakes the goal of automation in a high-stakes environment.
How so?
The AI isn't there to replace the doctor. It's there to find the needle in a massive haystack. Prompts AI parses millions of incoming SMS messages in multiple languages and dialects.
Which a human could never do fast enough.
Exactly. The AI's job is to instantly identify the one message out of 10,000 that says, I have a severe headache and blurry vision, which are critical signs of preeclampsia.
So it does the sorting, not the diagnosing.
You nailed it. It flags that specific message and immediately escalates it to a human clinical agent. The human makes the medical judgment and tells the mother to get to a clinic.
That makes total sense.
If you remove the human and the AI makes an error, the trust in the system instantly evaporates.
The mothers would just stop using it.
Exactly. By keeping the human central to the final clinical decision, Jacaranda builds unbreakable trust with the community. And the ROI on that trust is measurable. They are seeing actively improved postpartum health outcomes because the mothers actually believe the SMS system is looking out for them.
Wow. So the human in the loop is the feature that guarantees the adoption of the technology.
That's the secret sauce.
That completely flips the efficiency argument. The automation handles the scale, but the human oversight converts that scale into actual impact.
And we see that exact same reliance on rigorous real-world validation in our next case study, which is also based in Kenya, EIDU.
Ah, yes, EIDU. They run an AI-powered personalized learning platform for schools.
And educational AI is a minefield for trust.
Oh, I can imagine.
If you are a parent or a teacher, you are naturally going to be highly skeptical of an algorithm determining your child's curriculum.
Yeah, I'd want to know exactly what it's teaching.
Plus, a poorly trained educational AI could suffer from demographic bias, like suggesting culturally irrelevant materials or fundamentally misjudging a student's learning speed based on flawed data.
Which just widens the educational gap instead of closing it.
Exactly. And you cannot build trust with parents or educators through a slick marketing campaign. You can't just put a label on the software that says ethical.
People see right through that.
They do. EIDU understands that trust is an asset that must be continuously proven through hard data. The report outlines how they run continuous demographic fairness checks, ensuring the AI performs equally well across gender, geographic location, and age.
And they use randomized controlled trials, or RCTs, to prove it.
Yes, they do.
For anyone unfamiliar, an RCT is essentially the gold standard of scientific proof, usually used in medicine. How does EIDU apply a clinical trial methodology to a software rollout?
Well, they treat the software like a medical intervention. They'll take a large sample of classrooms. Half the classrooms, the control group, continue with their standard curriculum.
Okay, the baseline.
Right. The other half, the treatment group, integrates the EIDU AI personalization. They then rigorously measure the actual learning gains between the two groups over a set period.
So they aren't relying on theoretical models. They are forcing the AI to prove its efficacy in the chaotic environment of a real classroom before they scale it.
Exactly. By conducting these extensive beta tests and RCTs, EIDU generates undeniable empirical evidence that their system actually improves learning outcomes without introducing bias.
So when they take that platform to a new school district or a government education ministry, they aren't asking for blind faith.
No, they are handing over a stack of peer-reviewed level data. That evidence-based accountability is what allows them to scale responsibly.
Okay, let's bring all of this directly to the person listening right now. We have covered a massive amount of ground here.
We really have.
We've seen how adversarial debiasing drives revenue by finding hidden customers. We've seen how structural firewalls prevent catastrophic dual-use risks.
Right.
And we've seen how human oversight and rigorous RCTs build stakeholder trust. So what does this all mean for you?
That's the million-dollar question.
What if you are the VP of marketing or the chief financial officer? You do not know how to code a structural firewall. You can't write an adversarial algorithm. How do you, as a non-technical leader, actually govern this inside your organization?
That is the ultimate operational question of this entire report. Because you can have the best intentions, but without an accountability structure, ethics is just wishful thinking.
It's just a poster on the wall.
Exactly. Our final case study examines how Microsoft is handling this exact problem through their 2024 to 2025 updates regarding the Aether Committee and their responsible AI transparency reports.
Okay, so the Aether Committee is Microsoft's cross-functional ethics review body. I view a committee like this as a vital corporate translator.
I like that framing.
In any major enterprise, you have data scientists speaking in mathematical probabilities, you have legal teams speaking in risk liabilities, and you have sales teams pushing for quarterly deployment quotas.
And none of them speak the same language.
Exactly. If those three groups don't have a structured way to communicate, the product either never ships or it ships with massive blind spots. The committee takes the abstract engineering data and translates it into boardroom accountability.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it systematizes the governance. But, a committee is only as good as the tools it has to monitor the reality on the ground.
Right, they need actual data.
Microsoft doesn't just rely on executives debating in a conference room. They back the Aether Committee up with highly technical, built-in auditing tools. The report highlights the Azure AI Responsible AI Dashboard, which provides visual metrics on model fairness and performance.
They also implement C2PA standards for things like LinkedIn credentials. Let's break that down, because C2PA is becoming a massive standard. What is it, and how does it actually help a non-technical executive govern their platform?
Sure. C2PA stands for the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity.
Okay.
The easiest way to think about it is like a digital nutrition label permanently grafted onto a piece of media or data.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah. If an image, a document, or profile credential is AI-generated or altered, the C2PA standard mathematically and cryptographically binds that history to the file itself.
So it tracks the origin and all the edits.
Yes. When Microsoft implements this on LinkedIn, it means a recruiter or an executive can look at a credential or a piece of content and verify its authenticity instantly.
That's huge for stopping fake accounts.
It completely prevents the proliferation of synthetic fake profiles. Furthermore, they deploy content safety tools like Smart Impression AI in their healthcare divisions, which automatically scans for and redacts sensitive patient information before the AI even processes it.
Wow. So these tools detect the bias, they track the provenance of the data, and they stop harmful outputs before they reach the user.
Exactly.
And when Microsoft publishes its annual Responsible AI transparency reports, they are taking all the data from those dashboards and making it public.
Which brings us back to the core lesson for the listener. Your job as a leader isn't to write the Python script that debiases the model.
Good, because I definitely can't do that.
Right. Your job is to demand the architecture. You need to establish that cross-functional governance body. You must demand that your engineering teams integrate audit-friendly dashboards from day one.
You have to ask the hard questions.
You do. How are we testing this? Where is the demographic fairness data? How do I, as the COO, verify that this model isn't hallucinating?
Because when you have those tools in place, you can actually facilitate independent audits. You turn a sprawling, incomprehensible algorithm into a verifiable business asset.
And that reduces your legal exposure.
It strengthens your relationship with regulators.
And it makes responsibility scalable across your entire company.
The architecture of integrity is what allows you to build the skyscraper as high as you want, knowing the foundation will not crack under the pressure.
Well said.
Let's summarize the through line we have established today. We started by dismantling the idea that ethics is a speed bump. Zest AI showed us that treating fairness as an engineering goal, those debiasing algorithms, actually uncovers new, reliable revenue streams.
True growth.
Yeah. Then DeepMind demonstrated that rigorous, multi-layered risk mapping protects massive investments from catastrophic misuse. We saw through Jacaranda Health and EIDU that human-in-the-loop triage and clinical-level testing are the only ways to earn genuine adoption from skeptical end users.
You can't fake trust.
Nope. And finally, Microsoft provided the structural playbook. Cross-functional committees armed with concrete auditing tools allow non-technical executives to steer the ship confidently.
It really is a comprehensive blueprint for the next decade of enterprise technology.
It's been a great discussion, but as we wrap up this deep dive, we always want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that pushes the boundary of what we've discussed today.
This raises an important question, actually.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time today talking about humans auditing AI.
Right.
The Aether Committee, the clinicians at Jacaranda, the experts at DeepMind. But there is a rapidly approaching horizon we have to consider. As these AI systems become exponentially more complex, processing billions of parameters in milliseconds, making connections the human brain simply cannot map, will a room full of human executives eventually lose the ability to meaningfully understand the data on those dashboards?
Oh, wow.
Will we reach a point where we have to build secondary, highly specialized auditor AIs whose sole purpose is to sit on those cross-functional committees and translate the behavior of the primary AI for the humans?
That's wild.
Can a machine effectively and impartially audit another machine's ethics? Or will that fragile human in the loop always have to be the final anchor of our corporate integrity?
That is a brilliant tension to end on. We are building the skyscraper so high that we might soon need AI to inspect the very fault lines we are building on.
Something to think about.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take these blueprints, these specific mechanisms, back to your teams in your boardroom. Challenge your engineers, demand the architecture, and keep questioning the foundation. We will catch you on the next one.